I am the editor-in-chief of The Dispatched, which is a fictional online news source focusing on radical political issues through a ridiculously biased and absurd lens, primarily here in Columbus, Ohio. I want to thank everybody who is here and who organized this conference for having me come and talk about Ben's essay, The Art Scabs. So, this essay was written for artists, so to sort of smack them in the face with some basic concepts and radical perspectives. So I imagine to a bunch of Marxist literary scholars, you all find it pretty remedial. But Mr. Turk has included a few nice terms of phrase and some rather grotesque metaphors, so it might be worth a look-see. I'm going to just briefly summarize the contents for you all. But I want to remind you that this was written for people who do not know or care about much of what you all know or care about. So please be patient and forgiving in your responses. So the first couple sections of Art Scabs deal with aesthetic theory. Mr. Turk makes the argument that a certain set of values, a non-conformity, self-expression, rebelliousness, are deeply ingrained in the Western art world. He goes on to describe how these shared values are the foundation of arts communities and the root of any given artist's cachet in social circles. Of course, in different societies and traditions, this does not apply, but our Western cultural social landscape has been globally dominant for long enough that there are only a few scattered holdouts with non-Western approaches going on. But I digress. In the middle sections, Mr. Turk makes the argument that artists who betray these basic values, emotional honesty, deviance, opposition to apathy and banality, are scabs and deserve to be treated as such. Then Mr. Turk describes the two main enemies of arts, the state and capital. Big surprise there, eh? Well, these institutions, in addition to all the terrible and exploitative things that you all like to talk about and read about in your books, in addition, they also rein in, settle down, and control artistic impulses and freedoms on a scale and sophistication that has been unmatched throughout history. And yet, we have these scab artists towing the line, currying favor, and otherwise kissing the ass of state power and capitalist moneybags. Mr. Turk calls for artists to instead go to war against these banal institutions, which of course means starting with the scabs. Because capitalism has been having a bit of a hard time recently, don't you know? What with this global eco-crisis stuff coming down the pipe, things look like they might be getting even more bleak still. Rather exciting, isn't it? Unfortunately, there's also a transformation going on. The rise of the immaterial economy, or post-Fordism, or globalized neoliberalism, whatever you all like to call it. The thing is that Mr. Turk is trying to focus here is that artists actually play a really important role in that transition, in the resuscitation of capitalism. So he goes on to describe how this role is most overtly expressed in the realm of urban planning, or development, or gentrification, what have you. Demographers, sociologists, and other academics like y'all have described the artist's role in pretty explicit detail. Specifically, Richard Florida and Jane Jacobs have laid out the artist's role in this process clearly enough that even the city government in a shit town like Columbus, Ohio can follow the program, recruit scabs, and pump some life into the floundering economy by supporting the arts in a way, as a way to attract highly productive, highly consulted, and highly taxable populations back into the inner cities. The Short North 10 years ago and the Franklinton Arts District today are the clear and obvious local examples. Mr. Turk, of course, encourages people to block this process, to get in the way and shut the scabs down by whatever means seem to be the most fun. There's a lot of talk about bricks and who or what they can be thrown at. Ultimately, Mr. Turk's actions belie a more creative, prankster-type approach to the issue. For example, the Art Scabs essay initially dropped in the prime Franklinton Art Scab warehouse on April 13th of this year. The dispatch is actually proud to have played a role in that. We sent our quack man-on-the-street reporter, Riley Block, to 400 West Rich to do his typical shtick of asking strangers unwelcome and discomforting survey questions with very biased multiple-choice responses. Meanwhile, some of Mr. Turk's comrades snuck around inside the building, slipping copies of the Art Scabs essay under every studio door. The crew then went to another arts warehouse in a nearby neighborhood which is less targeted for arts development and did the same thing but with more general survey customers. Anyway, we've got a video of the coverage. There we go. The property manager's extreme defensiveness, and trust me, the online tirades from this guy were even more colorful and self-implicating and ridiculous.
I'm like hypnotized. I'm like hypnotized.
They've only emboldened Mr. Turk in his conclusion that art scabs are a decisive weak spot in the armor of the new capitalism, and thus a great target for continued confrontation. To that end, Mr. Turk has created a website, the Art Scabs, where radicals in various towns can call out prominent local scabs and report back about interventions and actions taken against these fuckers. Alright, that's all I've got.
I'm like hypnotized.